for speaking with us on KTN News. I think the first question would be to get from you an understanding of the President's choices in his newly appointed cabinet. What is specifically unique about these men and women that will enable them to deliver the President's four-point agenda?
You have members of the cabinet from very diverse backgrounds, very different professional capabilities, and most importantly, representing a different face of Kenya. And ultimately, the President was very keen within the constitutional limits to try as much as possible to tap into the different skill sets available to him across the country.
What was the major guiding principle in selecting these individuals?
A mix of two things, to be honest. Many lessons were learned from the first administration, one of which was if people don't know about it, or if you don't tell people what you've done, then they don't know about it. If you're unable to articulate and evangelize a particular agenda, then you don't carry the wananchi with you on the development path. They are not only professionally competent, they are very exposed persons in the sense that they were either career administrators, public service professionals, or seasoned political players in their respective environment.
Okay. Let's talk about the CSS who didn't retain their positions. Why is that? Did the President feel they underperformed? Because some would say if that was his thinking, then why not thank them for their service and allow them to serve the country in different capacities? Why then redeploy them to the diplomatic circles?
The President, in an ideal environment, would have wanted to juggle more of his first team and the new people that he would brought on board. But there are the constraints constitutionally that limit the size of the cabinet. And there were also performance issues, which sometimes the President doesn't have to say. It is apparent from his response that he was let down on many fronts by people who were given responsibilities to deliver on promises that the administration had made to the public.
Why then give people who have not performed as required another duty? Some would say this is rewarding mediocrity.
I would disagree. You know, in every environment, you get to learn, even in your own organization. On occasion, you may have people whose skills and aptitudes lies elsewhere. In our case, in an environment of, where you have close to 50 million Kenyans, all with their own expectations of government, in the political setup where in order to form government, you have to coalesce around different voting blocks, and all those interests come into play. So I would say that competence and mediocrity is slightly at the bottom of that list of consideration.
Okay. It's interesting that you say competence and mediocrity would be not top of the list, and that political considerations played a greater deal. Some would be concerned about that, then that this is all political rather than delivery.
I don't see anything that would compromise on the delivery agenda. The point I was trying to make was that if you have some people who may not have made it back into cabinet, it may not be because of competence or mediocrity. It may simply be that the real politic of the day does not allow that scenario to materialize. And that's the environment that we're in.
Now, you've mentioned inclusivity and diversity quite a bit, but when you take a look at all of the appointed cabinet secretaries, out of the 21, 11 are from two communities, and the dominant communities, that is that of the President and the Deputy President, and the rest of the 10 are then shared by persons from other communities. So one wonders where the inclusivity and the diversity is when a majority are coming from essentially the communities of the President and the Deputy President. Was this deliberate?
No two appointees come from the same county. Counties are not entirely homogeneous. Even within communities, there are different interests. You know, if I would take, for example, the Ma, you have very big clans within the Ma that are fundamentally different from each other, and that one appointment from Narok may not be considered the same way in Kajiado. Within central Kenya, for example, around the mountain, you have different communities that exist. You have the Kikuyu nation that sits within Nyeri. You have different interests in Kirinyaga. You have different interests in Nyandarua. You have different interests in Embu. Meru are as diverse as they would want to be from Nithi. So you would have to be a little bit more circumspect when you look at the composition of the cabinet beyond the superficial representation of those communities.
Be that as it may, Nzioka, though.
And having said that, underpinning a cabinet is political stability. You do not build a house without taking care of your foundation.
Well, there's other communities that also have similar considerations. The Luya, for example, has slightly over 20 sub-tribes. Were those considerations made there? If you take a look at the Mijikenda, there are 9. Were those considerations made there? But when you have 11 people from both the Kikuyu and the Kalenjin, take a look at the PSs. 19, again, from both of the top 2 communities.
Which counties?
The counties could be one thing, but there's also the perception that it creates amongst Kenyans. And you will agree with me that perception is important in terms of just trying to bring the country together.
Again, I would tell you, take a step back and look at the totality of the administration. There are only 22 cabinet slots. 22. Even if you divided that cake, whichever which way, to reflect what you would want, you would never be able to satisfy the 44 different communities in the country.
But 11?
No, let me
majority
finish.
From 2 communities?
They may be for 2 communities, but they represent different segments of those communities, right? And it would be unfair to imagine that even within those communities that they are homogeneous. They have very different interests. They have different problems on the ground. They have different considerations, all of which underpin the political decision. Now, more so is taking cognizance of the limitations of the cabinet is why the president, in consultation with the Public Service Commission, chose to exercise the constitutional power given to him under Article 132 by creating new offices within the public service at a level of seniority that would allow the Jubilee administration to reach out beyond its core base. You know, and let's not be naive about political parties and administrations. First of all, I would completely dispute, there's nothing contentious about 2017 election that is different from the contentions in 2013, that is different from the contentions in 2007. You know, it's the nature of Kenyan politics. We need to accept it.
Perhaps not accept it, but make it somewhat equitable, that everybody feels that it is a process that they can all fairly participate in.
The challenge of a constitutional setup that allows one man, one vote will produce this result. And you had a previous constitution. We went through a referendum process. We have a new constitution that upheld the same principle. It did, however, provide some safeguards about distribution by setting the minimum number of counties and the minimum, the 50+1 criteria that would make up the vote for at the presidential level. So there were some attempts to cure that. But Yvonne, we must again look at this within the real politics of Kenya's context.
Yeah, then you mentioned the introduction of other positions to perhaps alleviate the problem you're speaking of, and that is the Chief Administrative Secretary. Some see this as a backdoor reintroduction of the position of Assistant Minister, and now that we are speaking with you, you could perhaps clearly delineate the functions and the role of the CAS when we have the CS and we have the PS. So what exactly is the role of this, and what is the backing in law?
The creation of this office of the Chief Administrative Secretary is in recognition of the reality that we are in. There is nothing wrong with the reference to assistant ministers. So even to say that it's a backdoor, it's not like we are trading in narcotics. There's nothing wrong with having...
But yet that is a position that does not exist in our current constitutional
My position as Chief of Staff does not exist in the Constitution. But I always remind people, read the Constitution carefully. The key role of the president, one of his functions is to coordinate, direct, and oversee the functions of government.
So what will
right?
the CAS do?
The functions of government. In the same Article 132, subsection 4, right, it provides that in consultation with the Public Service Commission, the president may create any office in the public service to help him in the role of coordination, oversight, and direction of government. So the legal underpinning is so obvious, it would take even a very rudimentary knowledge of the Constitution to address that issue.
All right. So, Nzioka, then what will the CAS position do that will be different significantly from that of the PS and the CS?
Now, the CAS primary function is to, number one, undertake duties as delegated by the Cabinet Secretary, and duties which will entail the ability to coordinate the activities of the ministries. And most ministries, have more than one state department under them.
There are PSs.
For which there are PSs who run those state departments. You have specific roles such as representation of the Cabinet Secretary at specific functions, undertaking duties that have been delegated.
Where does this fit into the austerity measures that we've heard the president talking about significantly from when he took office in 2013? You remember the wage bill conference going around the country. The president has constantly talked about austerity. Lean, mean working machine is what we were perhaps made to understand. And then a position like this is created, which comes with all of the cost attached to it. Some would say that this flies in the face of that.
The cost to government is not just personnel at the senior level. In fact, the cabinet and the whole layer under PSs make less than 1% of government.
But shouldn't we be saving every little coin?
No, you shouldn't be saving every little coin without context. In every organization, you look at two things. You look at, first of all, generating income and wealth, and two, managing cost. You cannot do one without the other. For this country to make a step change, to achieve a very ambitious and aggressive development agenda, we need more people at the top. We need more leaders to drive those specific streams that will help to generate wealth, jobs, and opportunity for our country. We can then balance that out with the expense side of this discussion.
There's Raphael Tuju, who's the cabinet secretary without portfolio, who was not vetted, I believe today was not sworn in. And when we spoke to him on The Big Story on KTN News, he declined to give us details except to say that he will be co-opted into cabinet. So what exactly is the role of this cabinet secretary without portfolio?
It is only KTN that has called Raphael Tuju cabinet secretary without portfolio. Nowhere in the president's address did he say, I'm appointing Raphael Tuju cabinet secretary of this, that, or the other.
All right, so clarify
Raphael
for us. What's his portfolio?
has been co-opted into the cabinet as a member of the cabinet. Now, I'll give you an example. I sit in the cabinet, but I am not a member of the cabinet.
But your roles are spelled out.
No.
So we're asking
allow me to walk you through this train of thought, because it will help you. The cabinet, strictly speaking, is the president, the deputy president, the cabinet secretaries, the secretary to the cabinet. That is the cabinet. Or the person for the time being holding the role of secretary to the cabinet. That is the cabinet, strictly speaking. Right? Now, structurally speaking, there is a difference, because the cabinet needs to directly talk to the public service. So by design, the head of the public service is co-opted into the cabinet as a way of ensuring that there is no drop in the communication of decisions and directives from the cabinet. Number two, the chief of staff is co-opted into the cabinet to ensure that we manage the president's commitments and we help the president to achieve or actualize his aspirations. We are a bit on the softer side. The head of the public service handles the day-to-day tough work of engaging the public service on those commitments. Now, this government is a Jubilee government.
It's a Jubilee administration, not a Jubilee government.
It is a Jubilee government, right? Because the seat of government is where the president sits, right? And when somebody else who makes an attempt and gets it, they can call it what they want, right? But the government of Kenya today, as headed by President Kenyatta, is headed by a Jubilee administration, right? Now, the Jubilee administration is a factor of a political party. And the role of party politics for Jubilee is mission critical to how we get our things done. And I am sure you have seen from November 28th last year that the Jubilee Party and administration work hand in hand on all the decisions that the executive makes to the point of inflection, right? Every day we talk with our parliamentary spokes. Every day we talk to our governors. Every day we talk to our senators. That cohesiveness helps in the administration, and it helps the work of the government, and it actually helps deliver services to the wananchi. So why is Raphael Tuju co-opted into the cabinet? Because Raphael Tuju is the Secretary General of the Jubilee Party. So when he sits in the cabinet and policy positions are taken, legislative direction is given for us to go and present before Parliament or present before the Senate specific pieces of legislation that support our aspirations as an administration. Our first evangelist to our political core is Raphael Tuju.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Wouldn't the first evangelist of your deliverables be the president, who is the party leader?
Our party leader, you know, Yvonne,
allow me to also finish my train of thought, and then you can clarify we go.
Go ahead.
So you have the president, who is the head of state.
Yes.
He's also the party leader of Jubilee Party. Yes. You have the deputy president, William Ruto, who is the deputy president. He's also, you know, a member of the party, a senior ranking member of the party. And when you're talking about articulating that, say, within the legislature, Jubilee Party has a chief whip, has a majority leader whose work it is to take what has been decided by the executive and to see how that is presented within the legislature. So you already have all of these functions and all of these people that are articulating both the party position and then the subsequent deliverables in the National Assembly. So where then would this cabinet secretary without portfolio,
no, you stop calling him that. He's co-opted into the cabinet. He's not a cabinet secretary. So let's get that straight. Okay. He is co-opted. He is a member of President Kenyatta's cabinet. He's not a cabinet secretary. Okay. Right? Now, let's start from a very critical point. Today, the majority of members of county assembly are from which party? Jubilee. The majority of members of parliament are from which party? Jubilee. The majority of members of the Senate are from which party? Jubilee. The majority of governors are from which party? Jubilee. So today, we have managed to re-establish the centrality of party politics to governance. Not only do we have a strong government, we have a strong political party. Now, the party leader, like any good leader, has an entire machine that runs the party. The head of that machine is the Secretary General. He's not a wallflower. You know, we are not like other parties who every 2 weeks you see somebody different speaking for them and you don't know what exactly it is they do. You know, the Jubilee has a very structured mechanism. Raphael Tuju is our Secretary General as the person who runs the Jubilee Party on behalf of the party leader and the deputy party leader. So you find that that nexus, it doesn't hurt. You see, what I'm trying to find here is where you see the problem. Where is the problem?
It's not a problem. It's perhaps understanding of the role of this position.
Yes.
That is what we're seeking.
I hope I've helped to clarify.
And that is what Kenyans would like to know, because ultimately they're the ones that foot the bill for all of these positions. So perhaps they would like some more clarity on this position, its roles and its functions, and whether indeed these are functions that are being duplicated and may best be served by other people that already exist within the cabinet. It's not necessarily a problem, but just seeking clarification.
You know, one of the privileges of having an administration and being the president is that the president can then set direction. He can then spell out his vision and he can pick his people, you know, and those, he will be judged ultimately at the end of his tenure as to whether those were the right or the wrong decisions.
But people can also question that before that.
I think it is the right of every Kenyan to ask those questions. And, you know, they may not get answers that fit within what they want to hear. But the reality is that we have to design an administration around the expectations of what we have promised.
Okay. Let me conclude by asking you about the Big Four agenda. Considering where we've come from, and I know you said a little earlier in this conversation that 2017 was perhaps no different because we've had, you know, political divisions, ethnic divisions during every election cycle. Some might disagree, but some might say, well, whether 2017 was no different or not, that there's expectation on this administration to ensure that, you know, we're more cohesive as we go along. So considering everything that happened in 2017, some would feel it would only be natural that cohesion would form a big part of the president's agenda for the next 5 years. But what we see is the focus on creating jobs, the economy, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But some would have said that perhaps cohesion would have made it into the Big Four?
Cohesion is an outcome. It's not an event, it's not a process. It's an outcome. And it's an outcome of various things. It's an outcome of opportunity, it's an outcome of inclusivity, it's an outcome of I'm not hungry in the morning because I have food, it's an outcome of I'm not frustrated because I have work, it's an outcome that comes as a result of things functioning. So in order to achieve a cohesive nation, we must first give people a chance to partake of the economy of this country. So when we spent the time distilling the Big Four, and you know it's very difficult because you'd want to include more things. You'd want to say let's
it could have been the Big Five, Big Ten.
Let's have Big Ten. No, but really we looked at what are those 4 critical items that would help to equalize my fellow Kenyan in Suba, to make him the same as somebody in Lokitang, to make him the same as somebody in Witu or somebody in Taveta. Healthcare and access to affordable healthcare. You know, everyone looks at this in a very abstract sort of way. But the simplicity of the healthcare aspiration is that by the time we get to 2022, every Kenyan should be able to be within 30 minutes of a healthcare facility that is affordable and that gives them the caliber and the quality of services that they would expect as a citizen. You know, and to achieve universal healthcare is a journey that even in terms of political implementation brings together different political players.
All right. Then there was the 3-point agenda that the president had in 2013.
Yes.
Was there an audit, and you were actually in charge of delivery, you know, in the previous administration.
Yes.
Was there an audit of Uwiano Uchumi Wazi?
Yes.
And to then take a look at what didn't we deliver? What were our challenges? To therefore start to say, okay, so we're moving from that 3-point agenda and we're setting a 4-point agenda.
You know, not once, but twice, over 8 million Kenyans audited and approved the performance of President Kenyatta. Not once, twice. They did it on August 8th. He had an overwhelming victory. They did it again in October 26th and had an overwhelming victory. Now, both those instances is a reflection that even though the public may not feel that this administration delivered on all their promises, they felt that the right foundation has been set. Now, to your point, was everything that was promised between 2013 and 2017 done? No, it wasn't. Were efforts made to commence and make the commitments, follow through on those commitments? Yes. The 3-point agenda, remember, had sub-items. So in the Jubilee Manifesto from 2013, there was a big piece on governance and cohesion and dealing with corruption. That, as you can see, has been quite a difficult challenge, and it needs the entirety of government.
What was the one thing you'd say that didn't work with that specifically?
To get involved.
That
I think we
informed...
underestimated the capability of the executive to follow through and be able to deal with the issue of graft end to end from one place.
You've talked about 500,000 homes, access to universal access to healthcare.
Yes.
Is there a place in the president's agenda for winning the hearts and minds? Because all of these are, tangibles, which is a very valid point, as you say. But then there's also a feeling, a perception. People are divided in this country. Whether you want to determine whether they are more divided in 2017 than they were in 2013, 2007, be that as it may, people are divided in the country. And some would ask whether the president is seized of this matter and whether there is an attempt to reach out.
I still don't get... I'm trying to understand the outcome of any election is that there will be a winner and there's a loser. What we have in Kenya is a situation where we have sore losers. There's nothing wrong with the country. We just have a period of acceptance, right?
So is there
now, having moved on from there...
Is there anything then that you want to do for the sore losers? Because the sore losers, as you call them, are Kenyans.
Yes.
They pay their taxes, which runs government and provides the services to them. Yes. But some would say it's terminologies like those that continue to alienate when we talk about sore losers and people who are not accepting. And forget about the political class.
Let's call it what it is.
Let's talk about the ordinary Kenyans who are not Raila Odinga, who are not NASA leaders or NRM or whatever. But some would say that it's language like that just continues to get people angered rather than bringing them closer. They may be sore losers, but they're Kenyans.
I think the first way to deal with an issue is to confront the reality, right? And the reality is that there was an election, it came and it has gone. There was a winner and there was losers. We've had a challenge because some of the losers have not accepted, in spite of going through every conceivable step in the Constitution to get to where we are today. So let's deal with that and put it aside. Now, there is the politics of statecraft. The president is a consummate and very skilled politician, which is why he's president. He has a duty, both constitutional and moral, to bring this country together, to reach out to Kenyans of all shades, of all walks, and carry them along this journey. Because healthcare is not healthcare for people in central Kenya or North Rift. Healthcare is healthcare for every Kenyan, everywhere they may be. I may be a bit terse in my statements, but it's only because I'm not apologetic of being in government. It's just that, of course, now that you're here, there is a higher calling for us as government to be able to look past these political issues and provide leadership to all Kenyans.
Okay, so what is that one thing that will prove what you have just said? Yes. Separating the politicians from their followers. Yes. So whilst there might be, a difference in opinion between Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta, yes, there are the constituents, the followers, the Kenyans. And when we call them sore losers, what does that say to our viewers who are watching?
I'm saying the people
show?
who make, Yvonne, I watch TV to the point of fatigue. When we have people who look at law and they give us such absurd and obtuse interpretations of the law on a day-to-day basis, and they feed the country with such negative energy. But let's move away from there. I spend a considerable amount of time with the leadership of this country. And I can tell you, and I can tell every Kenyan watching this show, that the president is committed to being able to bring every Kenyan into a situation where they feel proud to be Kenyans. They have equal access to services by the state, that we work with their leaders, with their governors, to strengthen the role of devolution so that even services that the national government is unable to provide are provided through the governors. And that the president has a very bipartisan approach to dealing with governors. Every day we have governors from different parties and we talk to them. Forget the optics of what you see or the political noise. Every governor today would like more roads, where there are national roads passing. They would like more investment in infrastructure in their counties. They would like to supplement their allocations from shareable revenue because they feel it's not enough for them to achieve the aspirations that they need for their people. And this president is very committed to making that happen. I think the best way to judge it, because we are barely 3 months into his second term, the best way to judge it is to see a president that is a lot more accessible, a president who spends a lot more time strengthening intergovernmental relations, because that is critical to the new Kenya that we are in, and a president that is committed to each and every citizen in this country to give them the quality of life that they deserve.
Thank you. Mr. Nzioka Waita, Chief of Staff, thank you very much for speaking with us.
All right.
I appreciate the time.